of Gucci is a film about a love story gone wrong, basically. That's what happened. I saw it like the first in premiere week, which is unusual for me, but there you go. Purely on seeing the trailer earlier, I went to see it, so I have no idea. I mean, we've heard of Gucci, but I don't know anything about this family. I don't know anything about these people. The film is directed by Ridley Scott, and it has like everybody in the cast. Like, oh my God, Lady Gaga and Adam Driver and Jeremy Irons and Al Pacino. You know, names we want to see, so that's why I went to see it. But I have to say there were some issues with the film, and it's gorgeous. The film is absolutely gorgeous. The acting is wonderful. The sceneries are wonderful. This thing was filmed in Corona time, actually beginning of 2021 in spring. This film was filmed, which is like amazing. It's amazing you get anything done in a pandemic. I mean, really. So, on that subject, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. The questions I had with it, not before, but definitely after, is why would Ridley Scott make a film about the Gucci family? With the research, I can see that this is not like accidentally thrown onto this project. This is definitely his project. But turns out he is married to an Italian lady, and of course, then you quickly come to it. And there's and the book. This film is based on a book, which I have the title here. Where is it? Oh, where's the title? Found the title. It's based on The House of Gucci, a sensational story of murder, madness, glamour, and greed by Sarah Gay Forden. That sounds really like there's going to be madness, glamour, greed, and murder, right? The problem with this movie is that it doesn't make a choice in what story it's trying to tell. It starts off with a love story between Patrizio Reggiani and Maurizio Gucci, sort of filmed from her point of view. And this is basically the best bit of the entire movie, is that first section of the love story. It is lovely. Go watch that. Wonderful. Please. But then they are married, and his family shows back up, and they get embroiled into the madness that is this family, which how mad this family, or how this family is to each other, I actually found that out from a documentary I saw after I saw the movie. It's not clear in the movie. This movie it can't decide whose story it's telling, his or hers. It doesn't give enough motivations on both of their motivations for stuff that happens, like the divorce and stuff that happens afterwards. From the documentaries, there were some really cinema-worthy scenes of people fighting in boardrooms, like fisticuffs in boardrooms, and people throwing bags out of Gucci bags out of windows en masse, and none of that is in the movie. These things happen, but they're not in the movie. Why not? That's the thing you want to see in a movie. So I was sort of going, So they fall in love. They get into the family business. They basically have a sort of a Dallas/Dynasty kind of relationship with the family, with shares and legislation and people going to jail because other people ratted them out. And of course, something I didn't know when I saw the movie is that murder at the end. That murder that sort of falls on your head if you don't know the headlines that belong to the House of Gucci, which I didn't as such. I mean, it's just a bit of news. Why would I mean? I was there in the world when it happened, but for world news, it was a very small. So the whole murder falls on you, as a viewer who doesn't know, falls on your head quite suddenly. Without enough motivation. And that's the problem with this movie. There's not enough motivation to go around. There's not enough actual deciding. They're sort of trying to depict events because they're doing a historical film / a biopic of either Maurizio or Patricia. I can't tell. But they give us nothing in the way of motivation, and it's not helped by the fact that there are inconsistencies in. There's actually a mistake in the dates. The thing opens in 1978 on screen, but it's actually 1970. It's just plain up a mistake because but because there's only very few points where there actually is a date, you're sort of scratching your head a bit because they're going from 1978 through the 80s. They should be going through the 70s and the 80s, but we have no reference of date. The only reference of date other than the actual a date card is music. And even that is inconsistent because in the 1978 segment, which actually plays in 1970, 70, is a music that's from the 1990s, and then all through the 80s they play music, but like a year too late or a year or a couple of years too early, and it messes with your head because I know that the Rhythmics' Sweet Dreams is 1983. There's no other date to associated with that. It's 1983, and if you're going to say, oh now it's 1990 suddenly, and you're playing, you have no reference, and that's really did my head in for trying to follow the timeline. Yeah. Another thing that I noticed, which I think that from information on the internet, I got that the budget for this thing was not nearly as much as normal. This is like 75 millions for a movie, and for which I don't know, but that's not for a Ridley Scott movie, probably not that much. Also, they have the pandemic to contend with, and another thing that I noticed. So they filmed in the spring, and they had it out in November, and I was thinking, what? That's quite fast for a film nowadays. So I think that's probably the budget and pandemic. There was also another thing. The House of Gucci, the original House of Gucci, was started with the grandfather, who's not in the story. Actually started in 1921. So I think maybe for the centennial they wanted this film out with a 2021 date, which I understand, but it does put a pressure on getting stuff out fast, and then you get mistakes like putting 1978 where it should be 1970 in. Also, I noticed in a couple of the scenes that there's something wrong with the timing. It's the editing or the script, I don't know. But it's it's a scene between Al Pacino and Lady Gaga. I mean, they should be able to. That's not them, definitely. For some reason, the timing is off, and I don't know if that's because they were in a hurry or whatever, or there was not enough time with the actors to do the parts, or the time crunch for getting it out this year. I don't know. So I have to say it's yeah. All these things make some of the plots hard to follow, and there's a love plot, there is a family plot, and there is a money plot, and especially the money plot makes it hard to follow because it's about shares and money going around, and you're making it difficult for the viewer to follow it. And I mean, I enjoyed the heck out of this movie just looking at all these wonderful performances, because every single actor in this thing was good. Adam Driver doing this mannerisms of this, we call this kind of guy in a hark in Dutch. He is just a stiff guy, socially awkward, a sort of stiff dork. That's what he is. And her falling in love with this dork with. She does notice his Gucci name, and it was a famous name at the time. But when it comes to it, and he shows up without his inheritance, she takes him anyway. So that's a wonderful love story. And you can see in the first bit is lovely because you can very clearly see why he falls in love with her, and why she falls in love with him. And that's motivation. You can see that very clearly, and that's why it's the best bit. The motivation afterwards just waters down to nothing, and you don't understand why they're doing stuff at the end. Why is this guy they get a divorce, it doesn't work out. They have a couple of kids, they get a divorce, it doesn't work out that way, and he moves on. That I bet I understand, but the way he lets her go, he sort of cuts her out, basically, without. I mean, he gets a divorce by having the chauffeur drop off a letter, that sort of thing. It really is a hark. Okay, and then what has happened on her side? She has this fortune teller running around her for many years already, and she sort of gets really weird ideas out of this woman, except that apparently it's her own idea to just get a hit out on her ex-husband. Yeah, sort of out of the blue. And going, okay. Which happens and which is successful. Do you want to call a hit successful? Okay, the ex-husband dies, and she went to jail for 20 odd years, so yay, congratulations. How to fuck up your life, how to fuck up many people's lives in one go. I mean, and the why of it, you want to ask her why. This film doesn't say anything about why. It just happens, and as much as you saw in the beginning why she fell in love with him, it doesn't show us how she fell out of love with him to the point of putting out a hit on him. It doesn't, and I think that's the problem with this movie. And I think they were trying to make a faithful historical document, but the thing is, this is a movie. This is not a docudrama. This is not. If you have a docudrama, you can have make a scene, act out a scene, and then have somebody an interview explain what the motivations are and what they knew and what happened. This is a film. It should explain a little bit more than it did, and in the beginning it did. It's just they didn't keep it up. So that's my conclusion on that. It is a beautiful movie. The beginning is gorgeous. The acting performances are wonderful, but it has very definite issues.
So I have two questions. You said the film was probably intended to come out in 2021 for the centennial.
It's my inference, yeah.
Because you don't know any production reasons. So, do you think that maybe the film was also intended as a propaganda for the House of Gucci?
No. That's I did actually run into that. It is not in any way associated with the House of Gucci, because the House of Gucci is actually not associated with the family at all. At the end of this movie, there are no Guccis left to be in the House of Gucci, and it belongs to somebody else. They have not been sponsored by the people who now own the House of Gucci. The family was not happy at all. And that's another thing. The family was really seriously not happy by having Al Pacino as Uncle Aldo. Because I'm not going to repeat what they said. It wasn't nice. If you're going to do a biopic of people who with heirs of people, I mean, a lot of them are dead now, but she is still here. She did an interview. I saw an interview with her. She after all the time, she didn't learn nothing. After all that jail time. If you're going to do a movie about people who are still with descendants who are still here, you can't please them anyway. So you might as well make the movie that makes some statements. Because if you push your pussyfoot like this, say, okay, we're just going to depict the facts. That's a docudrama's job. That's not a film's job. The film should make these conclusions, make these motivations more clear, to make it a cohesive piece of entertainment, because film is entertainment.
Yeah,
it's not.
That was my second question. Is more like what? Because I haven't seen the movie.
You've seen the trailer.
I've seen the trailer, and it looked very interesting, full of potential. But then it really sounds like the lack of any sort of thing for the viewer to grab onto as to why somebody would be moved to put a hit out on her ex-husband. That you really would need to have that in there for this story to have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah, and there is actually read the Wikipedia page. If you're gonna, after you watch the movie, you can read the page, because it adds a couple of things that should have been in the movie and then that aren't, because there is a very definite reason why she might have done this hit, because he got divorced. They got a divorce, and she got an alimony of something really large amount of money per month. It was a very, very large amount of money per month. And then he got himself a nice girlfriend, and he was going to marry her soon. And once they got married, her alimony would be cut in half. So it'd be half of a very nice, so that is a motivation that is generally set forth for in the reality of it, which is okay. It's not in the movie. Not any reason is in the movie. This is, I mean, if you're not any reason.
Well, if there's no reason for somebody to put a hit out on anybody, doesn't matter what the relationship is if there's no reason, then that person is not sane. And that's a statement. If you don't make a statement about the why, then you make a statement that there wasn't a why.
Yeah.
And that's also...
This is a statement,
Do they want to make that statement?
No, they don't make that statement either.
I would be a little reluctant to just make that statement.
They make no statement whatsoever.
Right.
And I think that's a failing of this movie, because it's a movie and not a documentary. And so let's dot question mark. We see at the end.
Yeah.
That's it.
But you enjoyed watching it?
Yes.
Because it was pretty
Yes, it was pretty. It was so wonderfully acted. And a thing I should say, there is actually an interview going around from the 1990s, early 1990s, when everybody who is now dead was actually alive. And especially Maurizio Gucci was played by Adam Driver. The mannerisms that the character in the film has are straight from that interview. There's something weird about Maurizio because he, in a love story, he smiles quite broadly, and that's nice. But later, you find he smiles whenever something gets uncomfortable. When he is finally pushed out of the firm by a little bit of maneuvering, when he is presented with the facts, you are now out, whether you like it or not, he smiles. He smiles when there is embarrassing facts going on. So that puts a whole different spin on the love story, because she pursues him very strongly because he's a hark and he doesn't move unless you pursue him. She pursues him in a way that he could say no at any point. It's not pushing him into a corner and not letting him any options. But she has to tell him to ask her out, that sort of thing. So go see the movie. It was good, but not your questions will not be answered in the movie. That's the Wikipedia page. There's also a good documentary. I found two on YouTube. One was an American one, which was quite old, and a British one, which I think was actually a couple of years older. British one was very good. Lots of interviews, and they definitely watched that one before they made this movie for mannerisms and information and stuff like that. But it tells you a little bit more. It tells you also about the trial. Which they completely skip in the movie. She at the end she commits the murder. He's dead, and the next scene she is getting sentenced to 28 years in jail. So they skip that as well. I think this movie will actually do really well on the small screen. I think this is one that's going to be on TV a lot. It is a good romp for that, definitely. Yeah. So if you've watched it go watch it in the cinema, or by the time you see this, go buy it on DVD. It's worth your money. Bye.
That's your opinion.
That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. At least until.